Welcome back once again to Indaba Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris, and today's topic is about something that's near and dear to my heart, rugby. That's right, rugby returns. Professional rugby competition begins once again after nearly a 3-month hiatus around the planet with the Super Rugby Aotearoa competition in New Zealand, starting June 13th. You may be wondering, what exactly is Super Rugby Aotearoa? Well, Aotearoa is the Maori name for New Zealand, and this is a New Zealand-only competition, which raises a number of other questions. Sanzar's Super Rugby competition was suspended in mid-March after just 7 weeks of competition. Those games are washed. They will mean nothing for the season, as only New Zealand and later Australia beginning in July will pick up their rugby competitions. So this raises a number of questions about Super Rugby. Specifically, is this the demise of Super Rugby as we know it? A competition that's 2.5 decades old now. Will the movement by this unique competition in New Zealand result in the end demise of Super Rugby? As well as the often rumored discussion about South African franchises also departing Super Rugby to play in the Pro 14 competition in Europe. Will Aotearoa become a permanent fixture in rugby? And will Super Rugby go the way of the dodo? We shall see. The Super Rugby Aotearoa competition includes all 5 of the New Zealand Super Rugby franchises, namely the Blues, the Chiefs, the Crusaders, the Highlanders, and Hurricanes. It's a round-robin competition with 10 games, or 10 rounds, 2 games per weekend. The first game begins on the 13th of June, this weekend, with the Highlanders versus the Chiefs at Forsyth Bar Stadium in Dunedin. And the other game following that will be the Blues versus the Hurricanes at Eden Park in Auckland. Now, Super Rugby Aotearoa is the first professional sports league to return to competition since the advent of the Wuhan coronavirus, or COVID-19, with spectators. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Fans will be back in the stadium because New Zealand has lowered its COVID-19 level to just level 1. Which means that fans will be able to purchase tickets and attend the games this weekend and throughout the competition. Other professional sports have returned to competitions, for instance, baseball in South Korea, the Bundesliga in Germany for soccer, as well as UFC competitions. All have returned, but none of them have spectators. So the Super Rugby Aotearoa competition will be the first on the globe to have spectators. And this is a consequence of New Zealand having nearly 3 weeks without a single new case of COVID-19 having been reported. With only 1,504 total cases of confirmed COVID-19 thus far and 22 fatalities, New Zealand has weathered the storm better than many other countries. For a country of just over 4 million, under 5 million people, that's a relatively small number of cases. And the fact that it's been nearly 3 weeks since they've had a new case raises great hope for what's happening there. So what exactly will we see with this competition, ladies and gentlemen, the Super Rugby Aotearoa? Well, we'll see the return of Warren Gatland, the famed Wales coach, who is a Kiwi, coaching the Chiefs. And we will see Beauden Barrett and Dan Carter playing together for the Blues. Can you imagine that? On the same squad, Beauden Barrett and Dan Carter. The 38-year-old Carter has made a surprise return from Japan and is a welcome sight back in New Zealand rugby. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. We'll also see the return of Sam Whitelock to the Crusaders. Now, he was supposed to return in 2021, but because of the suspension of rugby in Japan, he's come back in 2020. So the return of Sam Whitelock and Dan Carter are quite exciting, as well as the move of Beauden Barrett over to the Blues, a team that's on the rise and resurgent once again. The competition will last 10 rounds from the 13th of June until the 15th of September. But as I mentioned, this does raise some questions in the rugby world. Is this the demise of Super Rugby? I think it's a fair question to ask. What will we see going forward? Will the South African teams abandon Super Rugby and move to Pro 14? And what's the benefit of that? We've already seen that it's a bit of a grueling schedule for the Cheetahs and for the Southern Kings. Not so much for the teams in Europe, as they play the majority of their games in Europe and only a handful of games in South Africa. But for the South African squads, they play a handful of games in Southern Africa, and then they play a lot of games in Europe, so they have to fly back and forth, and it's a bit of a challenge for them. What will happen there? We shall see. But I have a suspicion that we may be seeing the final days of Super Rugby, which in some respects is unfortunate, as it's been an amazing competition over its 2.5 decades. True, I'm a little tired of seeing the Crusaders win the title and seeing not enough South African sides win the title. But nonetheless, it has been an exciting competition for its 2+ decades of watching Super Rugby. And should it go the way of the dodo bird, I will miss Super Rugby. Yes, the competition between the traditional Southern Hemisphere teams of New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa has been an amazing, exciting thing to see in the professional era of rugby. To see it disappear would be rather disappointing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to update folks on what's happening with the return of Super Rugby Aotearoa in New Zealand this weekend, June 13th. It's quite an exciting development to see professional rugby come back on the stage for folks to watch. Now, I have no idea what the broadcast schedule is. Normally, this would be something on ESPN Plus here in the United States, but I've checked the schedule and the page is blank. No listing of whether the games will be broadcast here in the United States. Certainly, they'll be broadcast in New Zealand, and hopefully they'll be broadcast around the world for rugby fans to tune in, as this is the only professional rugby competition we can watch until Australia returns in July. And we'll see what happens around the rest of the world, because here in the U.S., Major League Rugby has suspended the balance of its season for 2020 and will not return until 2021 with a new lineup of franchises, with the Colorado Raptors having withdrawn from Major League Rugby and additional franchises coming into play. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this content, I ask that you feel free to subscribe to the channel by smashing that subscription button right down there. And if you've enjoyed that, then feel free to leave some comments on the channel, this video. I'm happy to read those and comment and respond if appropriate. And I ask that you smash the like button as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been a production of the Indaba Africa Group.